Greetings, everyone. This is Rock and Roll Spot Connection with the weekly comic book roundup. We've covered most of this week's Marvel books, most of this week's DC books. Now it's on to, well, what's left. Kicking things off with The Amazing Spider-Man number 75. Now I know what you're thinking. Why haven't... It's been a minute since I've done an issue of Amazing Spider-Man. You're correct, it has been. I believe it was the 2099 story back in 2019, maybe 2018 even? But yeah, anyway, so Nick Spencer's run finished up, God, I guess it was actually just last week. The big push was that Spider-Man faced a new villain named Kindred, who had and a and the a rather controversial Spider-Man story from Jim Allen Krasinski's run on the book, since passed, was retconned away so that it never actually happened. Elements of it still did, but not the parts that everyone objected. Basically, not the parts we all objected to. But we also got a justification for another, in my opinion, controversial story of the from the Straczynski era. One More Day. Why did Mephisto go after Peter and MJ's marriage? Well, because their daughter would actually take him down. But yeah, anyway. But, well, sadly, One More Day was not undone. At the very least, Peter and MJ are back together. So, the beginning of Spider-Man Beyond. It begins with Peter having a nightmare about him being a kid. He stole some gum from a shop and then went to talk to Uncle Ben about it. But when he goes to Uncle Ben, there's spiders everywhere, and Uncle Ben has no face. But Peter wakes up, gets showers, shaves. Turns out Peter Parker reads comic books even as an adult, which there's a long box in his bedroom, but Peter's working through everything, processing and working through everything he went through against Kindred. But while swinging around Manhattan, he runs into another Spider-Man. It's Ben Reilly. Who shows off some of his new gear, like a little drone called a spinneret, which can restrain an enemy. The next day at ESU, Peter runs into Ben Reilly. They talk, and it turns out that the Beyond Corporation owns the trademark to Spider-Man, and they've brought Ben on to be Spider-Man. Apparently, the Beyond Corporation Well, they've been making acquisitions, snatching up pieces of Roxxon brand and Parker Industries. Of course, Parker Industries, there's nothing left to buy, went under. But Ben explains that they didn't buy anything important or dangerous, just some old trademarks, like the one for the name and likeness of Spider-Man, which was done under while Otto was in Peter's body, in Superior Spider-Man. But yeah, Ben basically says, "Yeah, I'm their Spider-Man," and and he wants Peter to sit on the sidelines, but and he kind of goes, and Ben kind of says, "I'm not really asking." But so yeah. But Ben's got a girlfriend, Janine, and they have a little chat. But then the Beyond scientists come in and want to talk to Peter, or to Ben. That meanwhile, Peter is dealing with MJ, and well, talking with MJ. MJ wants him to deal with what he's going through, but he said says that he will just at the moment he will kind of I will just that he give me the time to do so. I get the feeling that I feel that might be part of it. But Peter gets a text about a supervillain attack. It's the UFOs. And so, Peter and Ben take on the UFOs. Ben gets to show off some of the tech in his suit. He has kinetic sensitive foam that locks under impact, which is able to at least for a moment, at least briefly, take down UFO member Ironside. Ironside, I believe it is. But Spider-Man take on the UFOs and take them down, but I think it's Vector. But one of them unleashes some radiation, and X-ray. Yeah, X-ray unleashes some radiation, but Ben's suit has radiation shielding and air scrubbing micro mesh. Peter's doesn't, though. And he's got radiation sickness. So, yeah, that's where our A story ends. So, we now have a handful of little backup stories to set up some of the things that are going to be happening in Spider-Man Beyond. These all take place in the realm of 2 weeks ago. First off, we've got Love and Monsters featuring largely the Daughters of the Dragon, Misty Knight and Colleen Wing. They're fighting some frog monsters, while Colleen chastises Misty about her dating habits, or rather her lack of or rather her not so much the type of person she dates, but more the fact that Colleen says maybe she's being a bit too picky. But they fight off the frog monsters, and then Spider-Man shows up, Ben, and has he's got a proposal for the two of them. Next up, you've got Kafka, focusing on Dr. Kafka, Ravencroft and for the Criminally Insane, while doing research on Electro, or potentially being a clone of the Maxwell Dillon Electro. Well, she's working on some tech of hers. It does kind of go. It does kind of explode, but Marcus Montplaisir from Beyond basically explains that one, they'd like to generously fund her work, and two, it's more a case of they've been using something similar, and in fact have gone beyond what she was working on, and they'd actually like her. As explained, they'd like to they want to fund the advancement of her work, which is, that's a simplistic way of putting it. They're a few steps ahead of her on it, but they would like her expertise in the rehabilitation of a specific subject, Ben Riley. And that is where the issue ends. We are also getting a miniseries set during the days of the Clone Saga called simply Ben Riley Spider-Man. Not sure if we'll be getting that one or not. If anything, I'll probably read the first issue, see what I think, and yeah. But we're going to have also, should be stated, Amazing Spider-Man is coming out at least 3 times a month for the foreseeable future. So I don't think we'll be going a single week without at least a Spider-Man book. But it's a good opening. It's a good opening for the story, and I'll go and show off the full wraparound cover too. I actually kind of dig the Ben Riley costume. I'll be honest. I mainly decided to check this out because because Beyond Corporation involved, because it's tangentially related to Next Wave. So, and as we all know, Next Wave is love, Next Wave is life. Anyways, it was a fun book. I'm looking forward to the rest of the story. So yeah, even with the fact that we're going to be alternating writers and art teams. So moving on to our next book, we've got Champions number 10. Sadly, the final issue. Again, man, the series he made it 50 issues legacy-wise. I think this is like the 3rd series with the modern day Champions. That's not counting the Champions book from the 70s. So yeah, but where we left off in Killer App, the Champions had won. The Kamala's Law was overturned, and they had beaten they had seemingly beaten Roxxon. However, Andre Sims, a developer at Roxxon, who had done some questionable things while employed with Stark Industries. Questionable by Tony standards, no less. So that's pretty questionable. He had been working on robots that were referred to as chaperones, which he launched. So the issue begins with the Champions celebrating, only to run into the chaperones as they begin fighting off. Andre is controlling them from his lab at it used to be his lab at Roxxon headquarters. But Miriam Blakemore goes to see him, and he does kind of point out that you You told me I was fired, but you hadn't taken away my security clearances, so you can't say you didn't want me to do this. But the device used to control them. Blakemore points out that it has a rather large flaw. It's supposed to there's supposed to be predictive, adaptive combat systems, and it's pretty much leaving Viv Vision and Ironheart alone because they're too unpredictable. It's focusing more on Miss Marvel, Spider-Man, and Nova. But they're able to take down the robots. However, Blakemore takes down Andre by electrocuting him. Not enough to, permanent to do any, not to unalive him, but enough to stop him. And Miriam Blakemore's already made it known what the actions she took, and oh yes, the chaperone thing was a rogue developer, blah 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 blah. Later, Viv Visions, they're hanging out. Turns out Viv's dog Sparky is a bit excitable around her friends, so the champions head out, and they take a team selfie. But it is also stated that they did manage to do, they did some good. Sure, they didn't bring down Roxxon, but they got an unjust law overturned. It pretty much boils down to basically saying, yeah, sure, not we didn't win all around, but we still we had some victory. We didn't win the war, but we won a few battles, including a big one. So sometimes you just have to you can't in the superhero business you kind of just have to take your victories where you can sometimes, and that is where the issue and sadly the series end. I'm a little bummed at the end of Champions. I don't know. I was hoping maybe it was beginning to find its groove. I kind of have some. I have realized that some slight issues with the series, mainly that it's in some ways portraying the champions as being more akin to like online influencers, which makes sense for the Marvel Universe to be perfectly honest, but still, just I don't know. It feels it doesn't feel right, I guess. So no, I was maybe the plan. I don't know. Just yeah. But sadly, like I said, sadly the series has ended, so we won't see what. It might be a while before we see the champions together again. And that brings us to our next book, Darkhold Alpha. So this is basically just going to be a series of one-shots again, like Extreme Carnage was. A Doombot discovers the Darkhold, the true Darkhold, in a place called Abysmia, which is beneath the U.S. Doom reads it, the Chthon scrolls, and we get this vision of the demonic apocalypse, and yeah, people die. There's death, destruction, mutilation, and yeah. But Victorious is present with the Doombots who at the excavation. One of them is serving as Doom is reading the book through one of them. But yeah, Scarlet Witch saw the vision as well, which woke her up from her sleep, and so she goes to attack. She goes to find Darkhold fights Victorious when Doom himself shows up. Wanda argues with him, kind of just says, Are you out of your fucking mind? It's the Darkhold. Chthon is going... You've read from it. Chthon has a way to Earth now. Way to go, dumbass. But, well, Victor insists he can defeat Chthon because, well, there's no foe that Victor Von Doom cannot quash. Especially not the dreaded Richards. You know, except for all those times he's tried and failed, which the failure was totally part of the plan. Larger plan. Right? Yeah. So, Doom travels to Chthon's realm, the other realm where Chthon is held, and tries to destroy Chthon. But Wanda convinces Victorious to basically utilize some of her power cosmic to make a seeking spell to find modern day versions of the Darkhold Defenders, a group written of in the Darkhold that traveled to Chthon's realm, and they were responsible for banishing him there, except that they all went mad. The Dreamer, the Hunter, the Artist, the Stoic, the Fool. Iron Man, Blade, Wasp, Black Bolt, and Spider-Man. They're all brought together. Wanda tells them what's going on. Everyone except for Black Bolt is totally keen on, like, yeah, we'll do it. Black Bolt, however, he feels his responsibility is to the Inhumans, and he really can't do this. But Doom returns, bloodied and battered, having had his ass handed to him by Chthon. And but yeah, Black Bolt is convinced to join up, and the whole thing is each of them must read a slight portion, just enough of the book to temper their mind for madness. Not too much, else they'll go truly mad. Yeah, they read too much. And instead of becoming the Darkhold Defenders, become the Darkhold Defiled. Which, get a quick look at them on the last couple pages. Honestly, I like the way they look. They're neat designs. The one-shots for each one should be fun reads. But yeah, Darkhold, it starts off with an interesting thing. I dig the whole kind of the Darkhold Defenders. Though I still remember back in the 90s, the Darkhold Redeemers. But yeah. Which brings it... Still, fun stuff. We'll see how the story goes. And for the sake of continuity, it does take place before the Hellfire Gala, so hence Wanda, not being dead. Or whatever the case is with her. Which brings us to our next book, Dark Ages, number 2. Where we left off, the world ended. Electromagnetic pulses emanating from the center of the earth. But Spidey's been, there were wars, billions died, but eventually people said it didn't have, things don't have to be like this. Jean Grey, Wolverine, Black Panther, Shang-Chi, Deadpool, Miss Marvel, Cap, Oh, God. Manifold, and of course, Xavier. But over the next 7 years, they rebuilt society, and things things were normal, but things were working. They were becoming a more the world was becoming a more unified society, even if they were separated by continents and massive stretches of land. Um, Wakanda was now the capital of the world, and Linnell Lafayette, Shuri, Tony Stark, Valeria Richards, T'Challa, Nadia Van Dyne, Amadeus Cho, and Victor Von Doom joined the greatest of non-powered thinkers and reimagined what the world could be. And they protected their utopia with webs. However, there were still threats: vampires, werewolves. Which, in fact, we see a moment with Scout, Wolverine, also Bloodstone and Blade going up against the vampire attack. Or rather, vampire and werewolf attack, and it's presumed they won. The hunters, not the vampires and werewolves. But Tony Stark and Pepper have a cave, and well, Tony's still building stuff, just not stuff that's electric. But he's attacked by a vampire. Shows up to attack. The vampire is promptly killed by Captain America, decapitated with his shield. They talk a bit, and Cap tells Tony, yeah, well, there's, you know, Europe is being largely ruled with an iron fist still, and, But it's a ruse. It's not actually Cap, it's Mystique, working for Apocalypse and Dracula. Well, Dracula and Apocalypse are working together, but Apocalypse teleports Tony and his minions away, and Apocalypse wants Tony to work for him, but Tony's just like, yeah, no, not my thing, sorry. But he had electricity because he's using Magneto to, well, make electricity in a Faraday cage. Also there, however, are Reed Richards, who's fantastic, Ironheart, various others, and of course Zebediah Kilgrave, who makes Tony Apocalypse's willing servant. And that is where the issue ends. This is definitely going to be a fun story to read through. That'll do it for this week's Marvel books. Still got a couple of DC books though, starting with Are You Afraid of Darkseid? This is one of at least 2 Halloween specials that DC's putting out this year. We've got a framing story with the Titans going camping at the behest of Robin. Then we get, but it suggests that they tell horrors. They tell scary stories. Starting with Red Arrow, who tells the story of Bloody Mary. Some kids in Gotham slip into the River Run Hotel looking for a mirror and trick someone Bloody Mary, who's apparently killing people in the hotel. Well, they went to a window and, Harley smashed through her mallet. But turned out Harley wasn't the only one in there, and because Darkseid was there. And Darkseid tells the tale of Bloody Mary. She used to be one of his female Furies, but something went wrong when she got an attack on New Genesis. Her experimental mother box malfunctioned, boom boom fractured. She was pulled into its matrix. Became neither living nor dead. But she attacks them. Darkseid and Harley team up, and they manage to banish her into a mirror, and, well, Harley was kind of like, yeah, she can't bother me, but if she's trapped in a mirror, except for maybe someone who travels through mirrors like Mirror Master, which she does. Next, Damien tells a story about Batman chasing Mad Hatter. Mad Hatter gets away, but then a truck shows up and tries to get Batman's attention. Um, but apparently he had a hitchhiker in the form of Mad Hatter who was going to try and stab him. Turns out the truck, though, was a ghost truck. 20 years ago, it crashed on that stretch of road, was totaled, and the driver killed. Next up, we've got Crush telling a story focusing on John Stewart, the Green Lantern. Um, the Empire of Tears built a fortress on the edge of Sector 666. Eons ago. But once someone manages to enter the fortress, it swallows them whole, and no one has ever. So John wants to look into it. It's trying to get using going after the loudest memories. He's already there though. So we get a landscape of the various buildings he drew up plans for but never built. Um, you know, Talking to him about about the other Green Earth Lanterns, which he explains. Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing about each one. Kyle Rayner came up with solutions to problems no one else could. Most creative man John's ever met. Guy Gardner's unapologetically himself for better or worse. And he's laid his life on the line for the greater good without a second thought more often than almost any other person in the cosmos. Hal Jordan doesn't buy into his own hype. Maybe an arrogant Air Force flyboy, but he's a dear friend. And then, of course, John's reminded of his lost love, Kamatui. But yeah, but John explains to the fortress that the Empire of Tears is long gone. They're not coming back. And so the fortress wants to destroy itself. But John comes up with a better idea. Turning it into a hostel for a Green Lantern hostel, giving it some power from his ring to every now and then to make sure that it can continue to function. And plans to use some of his old blueprints to build a new fortress around the fortress's brain. Next, we've got Wallace West telling us a story about the Phantom Stranger, meeting various people at just that right point in time to either to make sure things go a specific way. A swordsmith some centuries ago who made a blade out of nth metal that would have brought about war, nothing but war. There was a tomb builder, a child named Hala. The creature was mothered as 10,000 times 10,000. An artist. And I'm fairly certain it's supposed to be a specific artist, but I'm not entirely sure which one. There have been more than a few prolific comic artists to die these last few years. The Last Dodo Bird. A young boy named Pedro. An unknown gunman in an alleyway in Gotham City. Many, many people throughout the years, all being taken up an endless staircase. Next up, Aqualad has a story of himself and Aquaman facing off against a basic Canadian Loch Ness monster. But it turns out that while the monster is beginning to attack people, locals, it's not doing so of its own accord. It's been injured, so its eggs have been destroyed. But some other creatures show up that others never seen, and they attack Aqualad, and he's able to fend them off. Next morning, he wakes up, and Arthur tells him what happened. He was hallucinating, and the creatures that they found, they had basically been attacking the sea monster, the Canadian Loch Ness monster, Ogopogo, and basically it was getting hallucinogenics, and so that's why it was confused and angry and attacking locals. Next up, Red Arrow tells a story, another story, set in Zambezi. Vixen and Wonder Woman. Apparently Wonder Woman can talk to animals. One of her powers. It's lesser known, but apparently the story goes, so what's going on is these children with black eyes are showing up in this small village. They want to come in, but they want to enter the homes of the people, but their language use is limited and seems off-putting. Wonder Woman wraps around in the last one and realizes that the children with the black eyes are actually animals having manipulated the morphogenetic field and basically taken the form of humans to hide from poachers. So they track down Wonder Woman and Vixen track down the poachers, defeat them, free the animals that got captured, and that's that. Finally, Roundhouse, who's been a little hesitant about stories, tells the final story for the evening. The Cellar, featuring Clark Kent and Lois Lane. They're looking for some missing twins in Kansas, in rural Kansas. Asking, check it, just knocking on doors, asking, hey, you see these kids? See these kids? Clark finds the kids in the house they stop at, but there's something else in there. So a creature of magical origins who tries to absorb Superman's life force. But Lois is able to stop it. There's a magical rock which it's connected to, and but yeah, that defeats. So that's how the day is saved. But of course, as they're leaving, there are more rocks under a tree, and the issue ends with getting back to the framing device story. But Robin declares that they have triumphed over camping after all. It's a fun little one shot. I honestly do get a kick out of Halloween specials that get put out around October, both from the comic companies. So sadly, I don't think we're getting anything like that from Marvel this year. It's been a while since we did get one, but yeah. Anyway, on to our final book of the week, Justice League Infinity number 4. Where we left off, Amazo was still stuck in the space between realities, and Wonder Woman had vanished, replaced with bones and a tiara, and ended up on a world in which it was just her and Darkseid. So Amazo was still trapped between realities, but Wonder Woman, who narrates the issue, like I said, this is not the same Darkseid that she's faced before, though. It's a different Darkseid. Darkseid who knows pain. His own pain. So he tells his tale. First off, the Diana of his world was his lover. Or the woman he loved, I should say. But he went to Earth looking for the anti-life equation. A trade would suggest that a treaty was suggested. She went to Apocalypse as an ambassador. They debated philosophy, the meaning of life, and of death itself. And she showed him that existence could be more than struggle and misery. But he discovered that the anti-life equation was inside him. It was, of course, an entity of itself, and yeah, it was loosed upon the galaxy, destroying everything except Darkseid. Meanwhile, the League is trying to make it to where find Superman, on whichever reality he's on. But Martian Manhunter is telepathically linking himself to the ship's AI, but they are having problems. But he has a pep talk from Batman, and he's able to point Hawkgirl in the right direction. But a small portion of the anti-life entity remained on Apocalypse after it was wiped out to constantly torture Darkseid. But he realizes that there's if there's an anti-life entity, there must be a life entity, and hopefully, Darkseid and Wonder Woman can bring the anti-life or the life entity, bring about the life entity to at least stop the anti-life one, and maybe even undo what Darkseid has wrought. But she realizes, oh, he wants to use me, so she runs off, and while she's running, she reflects on when Hades told her that he was her father. In the the JLU episode, The Balance. She then runs into Hades, in fact, and they have a bit of a fight. Of course, it turns out it's not actually Hades. It's the anti-life entity. And Darkseid rushes to save her and sacrifices himself to stop the anti-life entity. But as Diana grieves for this version of Darkseid, she's met by the Justice Alliance arrives, led by the Superman from her reality, as well as the Calvin Ellis version of Superman, and various other versions of the heroes. There's a Green Lantern Superman, Nubia, different Aquaman, different Flash, Apache Chief, Hawkman, Batman with a little helicopter type thing, Martian Manhunter, yeah. But Superman introduces the Justice Alliance and tells Dinah they need their help, or her help, to save the multiverse. And that is where the issue ends. Honestly, Justice Infinity is so good. I'm really hoping it's not a mini-series, but I'm afraid it is. But that's going to do it for this week's Roundup. As always, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Links to my Facebook, Twitter, Patreon, and PayPal can be found in the description box down below. This is Rock and Roll Spock signing off saying, live long and rock hard.